Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the morning meeting. We appreciate you joining. Lots of new people. We're super excited about the growth of this program and this platform. That means lots of new people. So you old people have to listen to the rules, even though you know them already. This is a platform for peace, love, and understanding. The morning meeting is based on what some of us have been able to enjoy throughout our careers, the morning calls done by the television news networks, in which we'll lay out what happens during the day, and then we'll kick around some of the things, and we will take your questions and comments. If you're watching on YouTube, welcome. You can comment on the chat. Please remember, presumption of grace. The chat is not to attack people personally or to engage in negativity, but you can engage in robust debate as we do here on Two-Way. If you're here on Two-Way and you want to be in the conversation, please raise your hand. Lots of people raise their hand every day. We try to bring the regulars in as well, but we also like the new folks. So if you've not participated before by raising your hand and coming in and commenting or asking a question, please do. As I say, every child's dream in America, at least, is to be able to ask Sean Spicer and Dan Turrentine a question. Today is the day, at least potentially your lucky day. So I'll run through the day book. Sean, Dan, and I will kick things around, and then we will go to your questions. All right. The vice president has 3 events in Wisconsin today. I will note, as I do many days, that she starts her day. Her first event is at 1:20 Eastern time. I don't know about the rest of the people on here. I usually do stuff for my job before then. As we say, she's doing private meetings. She's probably meeting with constituency groups. She's not doing nothing, but no public events until 1:20. Um, so she does an event with a pool spray at the top. Not really sure what that event is because they're not all that forthcoming about what exactly she's doing. Vice President in La Crosse, Wisconsin at 3:15 with an event that is delivers remarks at 4:15 Central, 4:15 Eastern. And then she's in Green Bay, my mythical favorite city that will determine who wins. She delivers remarks at 7:15 Eastern, and then she heads off to Grand Rapids. So 3 events in Wisconsin for her. Donald Trump not doing very much publicly either. In fact, his first public event is not till this evening when he attends the Al Smith dinner, a traditional quadrennial event where the presidential candidates both go to deliver informal wear of speeches that are at once self-deprecating and cutting. Donald Trump will go. Kamala Harris is skipping it. The Republicans are claiming this will cause a massive backlash amongst Catholic voters. We shall see. But I'll also be curious to see what kind of speech he gives in her absence. I suspect whatever they write for him, he won't be able to resist attacking her in strong, negative, and personal terms. And we'll see how that plays amongst not just the New York Catholic community, but the other rich people who get to go who aren't Catholic. I've gone in the past, but my tux does not fit, so I'll skip it. He's got 2 interviews dropping. One that's been recorded with a guy named Patrick Bet David. You guys know, Sean, you know who that is? Who is that, Sean?
Huge on the right. Huge on the
Yeah.
right. Patrick McDavid, based in Florida, sort of one of those new up and coming kind of influencer types, older guy, but very influential on the right.
Yeah. Yep. I've heard of him, but I had to Google a little bit to figure out why he got the interview. Trump's done an interview with him, at least one in the past. That interview is supposed to have dropped 3 minutes ago, and I'm hoping that the morning meeting team will somehow produce by the end of the program at least one soundbite from it. So we shall see. But that's online now, at least it's supposed to be. And then he's taping an interview right before the Al Smith dinner with a guy named Raymond Aroro of EWTN, which says it's the world's largest Catholic
Catholic.
media organization. Huh?
Huge. Yeah. So this is the Catholic. This is our Catholic C-SPAN.
Yeah, Catholic C-SPAN. So that's supposed to drop at 10. The dinner will probably still be going on. I assume the dinner is going to be streamed live. So if you're interested in what Donald Trump's got to say today at 10 o'clock, you might need 2 screens. All right? So that's what he's doing. Tim Walz is in North Carolina, bus trip and rallies with Bill Clinton. He's in Durham. They start in Durham this morning and then Winston-Salem. The Walz folks are also very stingy about releasing details. I don't know if that's because they want to avoid anti-Israel protesters or the media or that's for security purposes, but I can't tell you what time those events are. What I can tell you is that Hillary Clinton is also in North Carolina today promoting her book. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of coverage the Democrats get without the top of the ticket, but with 3 stellar stars all in North Carolina today. J.D. Vance is in Pennsylvania for a delivering remarks in Pittsburgh at 12:30 Eastern Time. Doug Emhoff is doing a campaign event in Savannah, Georgia, and then at 12:40, and then another one at 3:15. President Biden heads overseas. All right, we try to be forward-looking, but we're going to look back for a moment, guys. bottom line, Sean, what is the impact of Kamala Harris's interview with Bret Baier?
By the way, before I get to that, I just want to say on the pool spray thing, I'll be interested. I think this might be a new tactic of theirs. You saw her implement this yesterday, so keep an eye on and I think it may be effective, right? They're basically going to use the pool spray. So for those watching, basically she'll walk down before getting on the plane. She did it yesterday, I think, getting off the plane. They assemble the traveling press corps, which is on her plane smaller, but it's usually on Air Force One, it's 11. And she'll make a statement about something and then basically get to walk away. And I'm saying this because it's a smart tactic where you get to engage with the media. It shows you publicly facing, but you're not subject to the back and forth that a normal interview would give you. My guess is that they're trying this today. It worked yesterday where they're pre-butting to Trump today. They're going to make some comment about Trump and then they get to walk away. So keep an eye on that, because if it works, I think this is going to be one of their new tactics down the final day. So there's your nugget for the day. Look, people are on both sides are trying to say that the interview played out for their point, but let's get back to the nuts of this. Why do you do an interview with a topic? You do Charlemagne the God to reach, black men in particular. You reach Howard Stern to reach older men that, whatever. You do The View to reach women. You do Univision to reach Hispanics. Why do you do Fox? Because you wanted to reach a more right-leaning conservative audience. You know you're going to get whacked on immigration. You know that's coming out. You know that Brett has to ask you about that because that's the number one issue to conservatives right now. I don't think she did herself any favors. If this was a normal interview on something else, maybe it was okay. But your goal was to attract or make a persuasion case to people who might be watching Fox that are conservative, that are Republicans, but don't like Donald Trump or might be willing to consider you. She did not do herself any favors on that interview. I thought it was bad. I give Brett a lot of credit for the questions that he asked, the tone in which he asked them, and the follow-up. This was not contentious. The media this morning saying it was a contentious interview because Brett did the job that most of them failed to do does not make it contention. I actually thought it was very respectful on both of their sides.
So, Dan, I'll just respond to Sean's last point. Sean, I don't think you could say it wasn't contentious. It was contentious. They started late. They put him under time pressure. She filibustered. She didn't give him opportunities to interrupt politely. He interrupted in a rude way. If that had been lots of other
that's called a normal Sunday show for a Republican way.
Yeah, well, I understand what you're saying, but he was super aggressive about interrupting her, and I understand why he did it. And he faced a choice because the interview would have been a failure, and he would have been judged very harshly if he just let her finish, because it would have been a three-question interview.
I guess, Mark, I don't disagree.
His tone and his manner, and I like Brett. I feel for him because I've had interviews start late in a live situation, but his tone and manner was less polite than the office of the vice presidency requires.
Okay, so I may not disagree entirely with your analysis, but what I'm saying is, if you're going to call, if not you, but if we're going to wake up and this is going to be the headline that it was contentious, then every Sunday morning interview with a Republican should start off with, it was a contentious interview, which it doesn't. So I'm just saying the standards are very different when it comes to how we judge interviews.
I agree, and I'm not a royalist, but I do think the vice president of the United States deserves a little more deference than your run-of-the-mill senator. That's just my traditionalist view. Dan, what's your view? I asked Sean to be brief,
ironically,
and he wasn't, so take as much time as you wish.
Yeah, I mean, if we closed our eyes and flipped the roles, this is what Democrats sound like when they listen to Trump with interviews, right? That, Republicans say it was contentious. And look, I thought she energized Democrats. You can see it all over Twitter, all over cable. Just like when Trump goes and brawls with the media, brawls with Democrats, Republicans love it, or Trump supporters love it. And I think for those who haven't watched the Two-Way Tonight last night, I highly recommend it. We heard people say that they felt like they finally saw the real Kamala Harris, that she had some passion, she had some fight. And I think what's becoming apparent as the campaign leans into this anti-Trump message, Harris believes it. Like, it may be the animating factor about why she really wants to be the next president. Doesn't like Trump, doesn't like a lot of his policies. And so, Sean, I think she went on not to win over the average MAGA voter who watches Fox. She went on to, again, try to remind people, the Haley Republicans, of all the reasons you don't like Trump. I don't know if this is going to be a winning message, but it is clear as day. It is where they're going, and she believes it.
Yeah, there was a
I
little
agree.
bit of, I will say this, there's a little bit of getting the base fired up, like, hey, she went on to Fox and she did hold her own. I'll give her, I mean, like, I disagree with the obfuscation of the answers where, but at the end of the day, I think if you're a Democrat and you wanted to see her show some fight, yeah, for the first time, I mean, she showed it. But I
Yeah.
think the answers were pretty pathetic.
I think the interview itself has no impact, but I think there's three threads from it that will continue to be super important. Number one, by saying my administration will not be a continuation of the Biden administration, that symbolically, not with specifics, but symbolically, that's a big deal. That is a huge repudiation. I'm sure Jill Biden won't like it one bit, but that I want to see if that's her line, right? I want to see if she continues to lean into that idea or whether that was a one-off to try to satisfy people in the media and others who want to hear that. Number two, she was not specific. Brett asked her amongst the hardest things about immigration, about trans operations. She just didn't answer. She did not. She dodged the questions. And this line of I'll enforce the law. That's like Al Gore's no controlling legal authority. To refuse to take a position or to say if she still has the position she's had. Again, that's politics. I'm not saying she's the only one who does that. Trump is evasive about a million things. But
Exactly.
but as we've heard here from lots of people, questions about whether she's specific, whether people know what she's doing as president. Again, if she loses, I think people will say she was never specific enough, and that's part of why they wouldn't vote for her. And then finally, this shift to her message not being vibes and joy and fighting for the middle class, but to Donald Trump must be stopped. I agree with you, Dan. It animates her. It animates much of the party. It's also what Joe Biden ran on and failed. Now, he didn't necessarily fail for that reason. Clearly, there's research, qualitative and quantitative research in the Democratic world that's been floating around forever that says this is how you beat Trump. This is how you keep him at a 46, 47%. But clearly, it's not the only message out there. And they're now going back to it. And I think they're going back to it because the other message wasn't getting her to over the top.
Can
So
I
we'll
just,
see on
Dan,
those
can
three
I
things.
just,
Yes.
to Mark's point, when I heard her say, this is not going to be Joe Biden's presidency, I assumed that Democrats would find that, the base would kind of find that insulting. I get Mark's point about Jill, but do you think that, am I wrong in that was that a good break or is that a bad thing?
I think one of the ironies is Joe Biden really has no base. You know, his base in 2020 was not Trump. And
Yep.
so I don't. I mean, I think most of the party has moved on. There are a few, Japanese soldiers still on the islands that think Biden would have been better, but the average Democrat was so relieved that Biden's not running that I actually think she has a ton of runway. I think the only problem for her is the media will love to stir this up. And the Biden senior team may leak to reporters this was gratuitous and whatever.
Yes.
But the average person in Green Bay,
that's what I think is going to be interesting about this. And so there's two things that I found fascinating. One is I think each side looks at some of the comments. Like I looked at that when I heard her say that and I go, oh, that's not going to go over well. And it's always funny what the other side thinks the other side is going to view and comment on, right? But then to your point, I think that this is where the Biden team, maybe not his base, but the White House Biden team says, you know what? You just shivved us again after everything we've done for you.
Yeah, look, if you're looking for October surprises that are big enough to break through in a climate where we've had assassination attempts and everything else, I think the Bidens could screw her, whether on purpose or not. I think they could produce an October surprise.
I think Joe Biden's going to be the one.
Yeah, well, it could be.
Mark, can I just say one thing about your second point, which is that she was evasive on immigration and stuff? Because I've heard this from a few Democrats recently. She is never going to come on and say, we screwed up. We made a mistake. If I could do it over again, or if I were president.
He listened to my talking points yesterday.
I agree. I agree she's not going to say that. But to me, I still don't understand what her actual position is, except her diversions. And everybody does diversions. She's in a special case because she came in late and because she does not have produced clarity in people's minds. But I agree with you. When people say she should cry uncle and say, oh my God, we suck. We totally blew it. The blood's on our hands. Of course, she's not going to say that.
Well, no, but I gave her credit. I said this yesterday. She showed empathy with the families of the victims, which was really smart, right? And then to Dan's point, that's where she would have pissed off her base if she said, "Yeah, we undid too much of the Trump thing first." So I think she's in a tough place on this because it was a bad move to do what they did. They bragged about it at the jump because they thought it would be smart, and now they got to figure out how to undo it. I think that was tough. And on the trans thing, to your point, Mark, I think this idea of following the law, part of the reason you run for office is to say, I'm going to lower taxes. I mean, if that you could equally say, well, do you still want to cut taxes? Well, the law says that the tax rate is 28%.
It's ridiculous. And to say Trump presided over the same thing, I mean, the whole thing is ridiculous, but he might work. All right, guys, we have a ton to get to. So I just want to do a few topics short, and then we want to get people in. So again, if you want to get in, please raise your hand. Let's just do these short. Huge speculation. Georgia, second day in a row, huge turnout. Early voting starts in North Carolina today. There's absentee information. Not every battleground state has data, but a lot of them do. My sense is we don't know. We don't know, for instance, in Georgia. And there's all this anecdotal stuff. When I used to work at ABC News, one of our executive producers would come in on election day and say, my dentist says he waited in line 30 minutes longer than he'd ever waited in line. Turnout is huge across America. All right. There's good anecdotal and there's bad. That dentist I never really credited. The anecdotal so far, I think, is mixed. And I know everybody wants to like read tea leaves and go to the betting markets and say Georgia's great for whatever. My view is we don't know, and we'll have to wait at least a few more days. Sean.
I would say this. I got more feedback on that discussion yesterday than I think any subject that we've had on. A lot of people showing me charts about the rural counties in Georgia, the number of votes that are coming from there versus the Atlanta and whatever. So I think that there's a possibility. And I did hear some anecdotal stuff of people outside Atlanta that live in neighborhoods that said all of my friends. And again, I don't view that or anything about sign waving or yard signs. But at the end of the day, I've also never seen such pushback from people on the right saying, look at the data. Now,
I know,
part of this is going to come down to the campaigns know who they are. So you can live in a rural county and still be a Democrat. And I think part of what the campaigns and the super PACs are going to do is to match that vote with what the data says about that person. Who is that person? And we'll know more. But it is not as bad. At least there is a good narrative for Republicans out here.
There is. But we don't know, of course, are these votes that are otherwise going to be banked?
Right.
We just don't know who they are. Even if they're Republicans, you don't really know that that's a vote that makes a difference compared to the normal modeling. Dan.
Yeah. And I just think to follow up on Sean's point, I talked to people on the Democratic side. They're equally as optimistic and they think there's green shoots in there for them.
Yeah.
And look, at the end of the day, Walz was there. Bill Clinton was there. Michelle Obama is now going to Georgia. Doug Emhoff is in Georgia, I think, for like the fourth time in the last 2 weeks. Clearly, Democrats see something there that they keep sending, big time surrogates to that state. So we'll just have to see.
All right. To that end, next topic, and again, we're trying to get through 2 more topics quick here, or 3. You have the reality of what I think is somewhat of a paradox, which is the blue wall path is still Harris's best path. But she can't count on winning all 3. She has enough money to play in all 7, so there's no trade-off choices. But from a strategy point of view and a 270 point of view, she has to assume there's a strong prospect that she must replace a blue wall state. And replacing a blue wall state requires more than one of the 4 Sunbelt states. You need 2 Sunbelt states, right, to replace Pennsylvania. So that's why they need to play in both. So the question is Harris best off, Dan, really just trying to win the 3 blue wall states? And to the extent she needs to make choices, particularly about her time, she's focused on blue wall, or is this scenario just as likely, maybe, that she's got to replace at least Pennsylvania, and therefore she's got to have a Sun Belt backup?
Yeah, sorry, fellow Democrats. I don't think the blue wall is her best bet, and I don't think she's going to go 3 for 3 there. So I think you absolutely have to compete in the Sun Belt. I think she has to win 2 of the 4, and she may need to win 3 of the 4 because I think it's possible she loses 2 of those 3 blue wall states.
Yeah, look, remember, all blue wall states aren't created equal either, right? You think about how big Pennsylvania and 19 electoral votes are. That's a big, big prize. If I were her, and again, it's obvious they took my advice yesterday on the Bret Baier interview. I would focus on North Carolina. I think there's concerns enough about Western North Carolina post-storm. Driving up your Charlotte vote might seem a smart move to play the odds that just by unfortunate circumstance, you're going to have a problem. Trump's going to have a problem in Western North Carolina. I would focus, number 1, on North Carolina. And then 2, I do think that there's a reason they're spending a lot of time in Georgia. You drive up the black vote, you drive up the suburban female vote outside of, Atlanta in particular. I think those would be your smart plays. I say that because if I were them, I'd say screw it on Arizona. It's a lot to travel to. Put some surrogates there, keep it in play, but I would shift all your resources and keep your playing field tighter.
But Sean, they
Yeah.
also think they may win Nevada. So I think it's just like a bet.
Oh, I do. I mean, yeah. But
You're in the
that's
neighborhood,
6
so they
votes,
stop in
right?
Arizona.
Yeah, fair enough. But I'm just saying, I actually think of all the 7, Nevada's the toughest one for us. So, so that being said, again, it's 6 electoral votes. So, when you talk about prizes, I can do a map a million times with Trump getting to 270 that doesn't even, with Nevada not having.
But if she were to win North Carolina, Georgia, and Nevada, she could lose Pennsylvania and Michigan.
Can I make one, Mark? I just want
Correct.
for the record one point here. I am concerned on our side that we are not paying enough attention to Nebraska too. There's obviously a lot of concerns about Deb Fischer's race in Nebraska. And I think because you have to double up on her, you might as well really double down. And this to me, if we end up in a 270, 268 race, I think there's a lot of people that are going to say, why did we put 4 staffers in Nebraska too? And that was it.
Right. So the resources is one reason, and the data just doesn't show that it's that winnable. I'm surprised. I don't understand.
It's an R+3 district. I get it, but it's a turnout district.
Yeah, no, I understand. So Nebraska too, to me, I've had the same question for a while. In terms of the other, just 2 other points. One is the electoral college map is different. It's not going to expand. In past cycles, there's been talk of expansion at the last minute, tempted to go into Texas or tempted to go into Minnesota. That's not going to happen. And then there's also not going to contract. But the 2 Western states are in a different category, because I think there's a fair amount of consensus now that Arizona is his best state and the Silver State is his worst state, right? So they're at the 2 polar ends, and it is an extraordinary time commitment to go out there. So you could see candidate time being affected and focused on the 5. But in terms of money, the Harris campaign can fully fund all 7 states. And so they don't have to make that kind of choice. I'm not sure that's true about the Trump campaign, although they claim it is. All right, really quick. Donald Trump gave a long answer about January 6th yesterday. We talked earlier about how Kamala Harris wants now to run against Trump's danger, the danger Trump poses to the Republic. That is no more vivid and no more tactile to voters than January 6th and election denialism. So now you've had this week J.D. Waltz saying Trump won the election.
J.D. Vance.
J.D. Vance, thank you, J.D. Vance. And
Tim Waltz lied about other things.
And you had Donald Trump yesterday at his town hall with Univision giving an extended, cartoonish answer about January 6th. He might as well have called all the people convicted of crimes patriots and pledged to pardon them. That's about the only thing he left out. So, Sean, if you know your opponent wants to run against you on an unpopular position that you've taken in the past, why would he do what he did? Is it because he's undisciplined? Is it because he's stubborn? Is it because he believes it? Why would he give it? We're not going to show it because we don't have time.
Yeah,
why would he embrace all of his January 6th unpopular positions and lies?
All I'm going to say on this is I believe that he can't help but defend this issue. This is something that he.
But what does that mean? I'm sorry to interrupt, like from Brett Baer, but what do you mean he can't help it? Because he's personally.
I mean, look, you saw. I said this before in the debate. He gets, if you go one. Fact, your tie is ugly. He goes, my tie is the greatest tie. Like, he can't help himself. You saw that question. If you haven't watched the Univision, I know it's a long one, but the guy goes off and says, hey, I was a Republican, I'm not voting for you. And here's 5 reasons why, one of which was January 6th. He could have pivoted to anything and said, look, my record when it came to unemployment and helping this country, keeping us safe, protecting us, blah, 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 was solid. I think you should look at my, I mean, the guy gave him a litany of things that he could have responded to as to why he was a former Republican. And he ended the question with, I want you to tell me why I should vote for you, right? He should have just said, here's why you should vote for me. He took the bait. He shouldn't do that, right? That's the bottom line. I think in that particular time, he chose, of all of the things on that menu, here are the things that I have a problem with, with why, he talked about, the previous people who weren't supporting him and and Trump chose January 6th to respond to. It was not the one that you should have picked.
He cannot help himself. He can never, ever give an inch. He has to dominate and project strength at all times. He can't help himself. And that's why she says, I don't want to go back. I mean, it plays right into
All
her
right,
message.
all right, all right. Lots of hands up. Helen, we're going to call on you first because I'm always a sucker for people working out, but keep going because we're not calling you yet. I want to look at two things. A lot of, I'll say, complaints or suggestions. People want us to talk more about Congress, control of Congress, and we should and we will. It's just not as much of a national focus as the presidential. We've seen President Trump do a lot of things to try to help win control of the House, keep control of the House and win control of the Senate. We've seen him do rallies in California and New York, partly geared towards it. So now there's this great Republican concern, maybe not about Senate control, but potentially about Senate control, if they lose the Nebraska Senate race where the incumbent is Deb Fischer. So President Trump made an ad on Trump Force One for Republican incumbent Deb Fischer, who's facing a surprisingly spirited challenge from independent Osborne. Let's look at the ad, please.
We don't need another Democrat in D.C. That's why President Trump is calling out Dan Osborne's lies.
His name is Dan Osborne, and he's a radical left person, a Bernie Sanders type Democrat. But we want somebody that's going to be strong, powerful, and great for our country. And it's not going to be Dan Osborne.
Dan Osborne is just another Democrat in disguise.
I'm Deb Fischer, and I approve this message.
Join Deb Fischer's team. Give today.
So leaving aside that they couldn't get him into a studio or even like a hotel suite to shoot that, they shoot on the plane. Dan, here's that ad makes me think of. A few weeks ago, we had Senate candidates or campaigns in Wisconsin and Michigan, Democrats ringing the alarm bell saying Harris is doing poorly and hurting us. The Democratic campaign has done a very good job of silencing those voices. You do not hear very many panicked voices on the record. What do you think the state is of the connection between the top of the ticket and Democratic candidates? Is there peace that will carry through? Or if she appears behind in a week, is there still a danger there for the party?
There is always a danger, but I think in the last week, Harris has now gotten on a front foot, and that has put some people at ease. She's out, she's about, she's energetic. And so it has tamped down a little bit in the last week. And, we haven't seen a dearth of polls showing the momentum is continuing to slide down. If that restarts, the hedging and complaining will restart.
Sean, how united is the Republican Party around Trump at this point in terms of the down ballot?
Oh, I think extremely. I mean, except for like a Maryland, where it doesn't make sense, then yeah, they're very united. Look, if Deb Fischer, I mean, we go back to data and everything. Like if Deb Fischer didn't think it was a good idea, they wouldn't be running that ad. Trump obviously is popular Nebraska wide. Obviously, there's a small Omaha problem, but beyond that, he's very popular there, and that's why they're running that there. She needs to get people excited and calling out Dan Osborne. Obviously, for people who may not be aware of this, he's running as an independent. The Dems are not running a candidate. They are supporting the independent. So that's the nature of the ad, is to say, hey, this guy is not the independent that he says he is.
But it's widely believed if he wins, he'll caucus with the Democrats.
Oh, no, right. But I just want people to understand why the nature of the ad. Right. Yeah. And that's important.
I did a poor job of setting it up. All right. We're going to get to your questions, but I want to check you one more thing. Marsha Blackburn, running for an easy re-election in Tennessee, Republican senator, has a new ad. And my point of showing this is, as you may have heard me say this before, I'm just stunned at how unviral, uncompelling, how cookie cutter the Trump, Harris, and Super PAC for ads for them are. So let's look at what I consider to be a good ad.
Some say I'm too tough, that I should be more delicate. But you know what? It's time to break some China. China stole our jobs, sent us a virus. They're buying up our land and spying on us. I'm Marsha Blackburn, and I approve this message because we're going to have to break a lot more China to save America.
All right, I've watched it about 4 times. I can't get enough of it. So, guys, I know you agree with me that is if you're watching TV in Tennessee, you're going to watch that ad. What am I missing? Why have we not seen a single memorable ad from the presidential campaigns yet?
So the funny thing is, you look at some of Dave McCormick's ads in Pennsylvania, same thing,
Yeah.
really good, spot on.
Yeah.
Eric Hovde has a great ad in Wisconsin, same thing, where he comes out and he says, Eric Hovde supports, bats and dogs. I mean, he hates kittens and cats. It's very cute. Same thing. It's compelling. It's funny. This is Marsha. First of all, kudos to her for going after China. I just on the issue, I'm excited.
Yeah.
It should be a bipartisan concern about. I'm pissed about how little China has played into this.
I agree.
But Marsha's great. She understands these issues really well. And your point is she doesn't have a tough race. So this was her, I think, reinforcing an issue. It's kudos to her for doing this. And she can sell it. That's the other thing, Mark. You got to be able to sell the ad, right?
Donald Trump's hosted Saturday Night Live. Kamala Harris's best friends are Hollywood figures. They can't make one funny ad.
There's so much science now. There's so much analytics and dial testing of everything that I think sometimes, in a close race, you're sitting around and this is where you just need some, as you would say, Hollywood creative types to say, not what does the science say, like, let's break some China. Let's do something different to spice it up. But in a close race, everyone is so tense and, worried about every single percentage point that sometimes you just get so buried in the sand with these dull ads.
I just want one good ad. That's all I ask. All right. Helen, welcome in. Thank you for joining. Thank you for staying fit. Tell us where you are, who you're supporting, and what's on your mind, please.
Hi, so I'm in the Colorado Rocky Mountains in Eagle County. I am a Harris supporter. I wanted to revisit the discussion yesterday from the Arizona voter who thought the filibuster was a litmus test. Because guess what? Donald Trump wants to get rid of the filibuster also, and he has publicly said so. Back in 2018, he met with Senate Republicans, told them all legislation should be passed with a simple majority. The Republicans didn't do it. There's lots of reasons, I think, why the Republicans don't want to eliminate the filibuster, because it maintains the status quo. The filibuster vote count has changed a lot over history. And it's not just the Democrats that have done it. And yes, the Democrats took it down to 60 votes.
No, to 50.
50 for judicial appointments.
Right. And right. Well, it went to 60, then it went down to 54 for non-Supreme Court judicial appointment and cabinet members. And then guess what? McConnell took it down to 54 Supreme Court justices. So both parties are playing this game of changing the filibuster amount in order to get through what they want. So if that's your litmus test for Kamala, it also needs to be your litmus test for Trump.
So
Helen, take your point, but do you support eliminating the filibuster for legislation, or you're anti-hypocrisy?
Well, I'm anti-hypocrisy, number one, but I also believe that the Republicans and the conservatives have been very good at playing a game of not following tradition. After all, McConnell didn't allow Merrick Garland nomination to go before the Senate. So there we go.
That was arguably not against history, but you could argue that one either way. You could.
Okay. The Supreme Court justices that have recently been put in place on the conservative side have all during their questioning said that they would uphold precedent. Well, we've seen where that's gone with Roe versus Wade and the Chevron doctrine getting knocked down. So at this point, I think the Democrats need to fight like hell. I'm pissed. I'm pissed at the Democrats for not taking the Supreme Court more seriously and making that a focus in the election, that we need to get the presidency. We need to get the Senate in order to appoint more judges, because there are probably judges going to be resigning or dying, next term. And to that, I would also say I am very unhappy that Ruth Bader Ginsburg didn't step down with all her illnesses to give Obama the chance to appoint a new judge. And I'm very disappointed that Sotomayor isn't stepping down to have given Biden a new chance. So basically, the Democrats are shooting themselves in the ass over the Supreme Court.
Sean.
Well, Helen, though, I don't know if you heard Harris yesterday in Pennsylvania. She talked about the Supreme. I mean, she is starting. This goes to the point I made earlier in the week. Your passion James's passion yesterday, the party's passion to elevate all of these. Harris is going there. She can go on going there. Talking about the Supreme Court, talking about the importance of judges. I think she specifically said the next president may nominate 2 or 3. She's going there.
Yeah.
So the first thing I'll say is I'm going to parrot my 8-year-old self. They started it. You know, and look, when Democrats changed the rules, the Republicans said, all right, fine. I will say this. You're right about Trump. When he wins, when we get a majority, he will try to urge them to get rid of the filibuster to push through everything. And I think that at least the current slate of Republicans will resist that. The party writ large, in terms of the Senate conference, is resistant to changing the filibuster because they're worried about minority rights. The difference is that the Democrats want to change it only for issues that matter to them. And that's the irony. And again, they love to change the rules to benefit them, but don't want it for everyone else. This is a much longer discussion, although I will say to you, I am in agreement that the judiciary and appointments should be a huge thing. I want to know who those candidates are. I do believe that Trump did himself some huge favors in 2016 when he reassured conservative and evangelical voters by the type of justices that he would appoint. Too often, Republicans were appointing justices and they were milquetoast and soft and, you know, would say what they had to and then start voting with the Democratic appointed judges. So I'm glad to see us finally get some backbone on the judiciary. And I think Donald Trump's appointments were awesome.
Helen, who
I
do you
will
think's
say,
gonna...
you know, Mitch McConnell's leaving. We don't know what the next leader
I agree
do.
with you. I agree with you, Dan. I think if Trump wins, he will pressure whoever's in there to get rid of it, and they'll bend or break. Helen, who do you think's going to win and why?
I think it's a toss-up, but my gut feel is Harris is going to win. And I think because the polls aren't capturing the enthusiasm that has come about with Harris replacing Trump and potentially all the new voters that also is going to bring out, because I think the Harris campaign, my belief, is doing a good job of playing social media and attracting a lot of people to come out to vote.
All right, last question for you, Helen. What do you like least about Kamala Harris and most about Donald Trump?
I wish she'd be a little bit more straightforward in some of her answers. What do I like most about Donald Trump? I knew you were going to ask that, and I thought about that.
You probably spent more time thinking about it than she did about her answers on Prepare.
Actually, it was an action he took in the past, which was to approve funding for Operation Warp Speed, so we got the COVID vaccine.
Great
The rest
answer,
of
Helen.
his handling of COVID sucked, but that was a great thing for him to do.
Helen, thank you. Thank you for coming on. We hope you'll come back regularly.
Helen, we're going to send you a blue workout shirt.
Yeah. Margaret, welcome in. Thank you for joining. Tell folks where you are, who you're supporting for president, and what's on your mind, please.
Good morning. I am from Fort Worth, Texas, and I am voting for Trump. I wanted to comment. I watched Kamala's interview last night on Fox, and I think it was one of the hosts say that Fox has the most moderates or undecided people that watch their channel. And in her interview, I didn't feel like she spoke to her base, but I didn't hear anything that would move anybody over that was undecided at all. I think if you hate Trump, you're not going to vote for him. And that was every single answer that we got was, yeah, we've been here 3.5 years, but Trump's been running. Like that to me, like literally made me laugh out loud, because I think people that I know that are undecided are leaning Trump because of her policy. Like there's just no there. And I can't figure out if it's because her policies are actually really progressive and she can't espouse that, or if she just doesn't really have anything and she's kind of being told these are the things that you need to say. However it's coming across, it seems very disingenuous. And I'm just curious what y'all thought, if it helped with undecided, people who don't know, or if it was just, yeah, she was angry and, kind of fought back, but there was not really anything there that I could like hang on to, because I try to listen to both sides.
Yeah. That's a great question, Margaret. Thank you. Hold on. Dan, go ahead.
Yeah, Margaret, great question. It's the $1 million question. There's a story in the New York Times today about Future Forward PAC, which is a gigantic Democratic soft money organization. They're spending over $700 million on ads in support of Harris or against Trump. Their data science people, their testing says that ads just against Trump do not move the needle with undecided voters. And this is the big bet. To Mark's point earlier in the show, there are incredibly smart people working for Harris. They are, constantly testing their messages. So they must see something, as the Biden people thought they did, that this purely anti-Trump focus will move undecideds. But we hear it on two-way. We see some contradictory evidence. We don't know.
Well, I guess my thing is that also I think one of the best things for Trump was that he actually lost 2020, because I think it gave him some hindsight. And I also think that it allowed people to see what they got. And in the issues that are really important to people today, immigration, the economy, all of those really super important issues, to me, the answer is clear, because I do feel like we were safer, better 4 years ago. But all of the dodging of those questions, I just don't think that it can move anything. And I just don't understand what their play is this close to voting. Early voting here starts on Monday. I'm going to go early vote. And I was disappointed, because as a woman, you want to see, it would be cool. But I just can't get behind her. I think her policies are not great.
Well, Margaret, one last thing. Sorry, then Sean, if you want to jump in. If you recall, after the first debate, or the only debate between Harris and Trump, Democrats were elated because they thought Harris kicked his hiney with all the like put downs of Trump. But the polls didn't really move. And we kind of later learned that a lot of undecideds were put off that she wouldn't fill in the blanks about her. It could be that the same dynamic is at play in the Fox interview. We don't know. As a Democrat, I hope it's wrong, but we don't know.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Sean.
No, I want to hear it. Please go.
I'm kind of flabbergasted. Like, they seem to be trying new tactics, and early voting's already started. Like, it's really close. So I guess it's just a gamble that they're willing to take. But I just kind of blows my mind, because I've never seen anything like it, from like no message and then a no message with like an angry spin. Like, I don't know exactly where it's going. So I'm sorry to interrupt, Sean.
Yeah, first of all, thank you for sharing that. I think you articulated the views of a lot of people who we keep talking about Kamala curious. They were interested. They weren't sure they were voting for Trump, but they were willing to give her a shot. She's not giving it to them. The one thing about Trump, love him or hate him, you've been on the scene for 10 years. You have to have been under a rock that's got another rock not to know who Donald Trump is and what he stands for. And if you love him, you love him. If you don't, you don't. But as you were talking, I kept thinking it was like the end of like a segment of political Shark Tank. It was like, for all those reasons, I'm out. And, she had an opportunity last night to make the case to people who were willing to give her a chance on issues that are the top issues for most voters. And I really felt like at the end of it, it was, hey, we love the product for a second, but your sales suck. It literally, I could have heard one of the sharks saying, for all those reasons, I'm out.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly. I was never in her camp, because I followed her policies from California. I watched what she's been doing. So, but I'm always curious, because I want to be fair. And I think the best way to learn how to debate with people is to pay attention and give a fair shake to both sides. So that's super important for me to do. I just thought it was a missed opportunity. I think that in regards to whether the interview was hostile or not, I do think it was. But I felt like with Kamala showing up late, Brett was in this time crunch trying to ask the questions, that she did want to filibuster to prevent him from really nailing down any hard answers or asking more follow-up questions. And ironic for me, for someone who wants to get rid of the filibuster, sure enjoyed doing it on the interview last night. But I just didn't think it moved anything for anybody. And I'm in a red state, but it's important to vote. And so I just thought it
Who are you
was
voting
kind
for
of
in your Senate
disappointing.
race?
Ted Cruz.
Margaret, thank you for all that. I agree with your analysis of the interview and Brett exactly and of her answers. How'd you find out about the morning meeting, Margaret?
I am a YouTube junkie. I probably watch YouTube more than I watch anything else. And I love hearing politics. And I have to say to Dan, he is one Democrat that I really love listening to because he is fair. He is not in the, everything that the Democrats do is great. And I really appreciate that fair analysis. He has a great smile. And so when I see him on here, I'm like, this is great. These are people that can have conversations. I'm a hairdresser. I only do men's hair, and I have clients from all political spectrums, and we have lively debate all the time. I've encouraged everyone to early vote, but I just found it on YouTube. I remember Sean from the first Trump administration. He always cracked me up, and so I thought I'd watch, and here I am.
Margaret,
All right,
appreciate
you're welcome
that.
back anytime.
We say about Dan what we say about Texans. It ain't bragging if you can do it.
Right.
Margaret, thank you. Appreciate it. Come
Thank
back
you,
regularly.
guys.
David, welcome in. Tell folks who you're supporting, where you are, and what's on your mind.
Yeah, so this is David. I'm in Dewey Beach, Delaware, although I vote in Washington, D.C. Definitely supporting Kamala. I wanted to chat for a few minutes about a couple of things about last night. First is, even Fox News knew that she did pretty good. And I say that because after they aired the interview, they had Dana Perino and Martha McCallum on, and they came up with some criticisms of her, but they weren't really hitting her hard. And they were trying to hit her as hard as they could. So the fact that they only came up with some light criticisms, from my perspective, that means that she did pretty good. I appreciated what you had to say about the tone of the interview. No one likes, hearing all the crosstalk, and certainly they both share some guilt about it. But from my perspective, Bret Baier really missed an opportunity. He treated this as a one and done type of interview, and he was more concerned about making sure kind of his future at Fox than in really trying to uncover and get to the point on policies. And I want to bring up a few kind of gotcha moments that he went through. The first was where he was demanding an apology on the immigration issue where the released person, killed that woman's daughter. Rather than demanding an apology, he really should have been focusing on the policy, getting her to commit it, trying to force her to apologize. That's just a gotcha moment. Instead, he really could have been diving into the specific policy. Why did you do this? Was it a mistake? And you should have done something differently.
Well, he did that also.
Yeah, but the gotcha moment there, the next gotcha moment was him talking about Biden's cognitive state. Look, we all know she had her own private opinions. The chances of her talking about her own private opinions of where he was at, that's minimal. That's another gotcha moment. And then third...
I'm sorry on that one. I just got to say, there's this question of accountability and honesty and about the American people's trust in her judgment. I don't think it's a gotcha moment, a gotcha question to just ask her to explain what she knew, when she knew it, and how she felt about it.
Probably. But in fairness to her, okay, she had no direct knowledge of anything that was factual. She probably just had her own suspicion.
Well, she did. She had a TV set where she could have watched President Biden speak to a dead congresswoman. I mean, she didn't need any inside knowledge to have an opinion about whether he was suffering the cognitive decline that tens of millions of Americans with no inside knowledge saw themselves. And she had inside knowledge because she met with him regularly.
Yeah, but I just don't think that we've kind of moved on beyond this issue, and trying to get her on live television to kind of rat him out.
You've moved. I agree with you that it's unlikely she'd do it, but you've moved on from it. But for tens of millions of Americans, we have a guy in the Oval Office whose cognitive decline was sufficient that he was forced to not continue to run for president, and a vice president who, like everyone else in the administration, sat by in silence while they saw what was happening. So I don't think it's a gotcha question. She's entitled not to answer it, but I don't think that's a gotcha question. I know you had more you want to get to, but we're out of time, and Sean at least needs to go. So stand by. Sean, go ahead and respond.
Yeah, I think I appreciate that, because I think that this goes back to the point, David. I respect your opinion on this, and this is the point of two-way, I think, and this meeting is you've got a perspective about issues that you care about and you think are important or that don't matter as much, and I respect that, right? But equally, on the other side, there's issues that we think haven't been accounted for. And that's the beauty of this platform, is that we get to hear what you think is important. If we disagree with it, and again, I learned from it. I agree with Mark's sentiment. I think it's important from an accountability standpoint, because she was out there saying he's good to go. I've seen him in the Situation Room, and then suddenly it was he's exit stage left. And so it's like, well, wait a second, what changed? And I will say this, I think it's important, and we don't have time to discuss this, but I found how Fox handled this a whole separate discussion worthy of discussion, because I was intrigued by it too. And I think that there's a balance that Fox has between trying to appease a bunch of people who watch Fox and then trying to position themselves as a network that can say, see, Democrats, you should come on us, or we should host a debate in the future. And there was this balance last night that I thought Fox was trying to achieve. And so I find your question really interesting. Unfortunately, we don't have the time to go through it, but it's a good subject to talk about.
Yeah, at midnight tonight, we'll be doing a full show on how Brett Baer did in the Fox position. Dan, anything you want to say or ask before we conclude?
No, just, I mean, look, I know this isn't going to be popular. History is not going to treat a lot of Democrats kindly on the Biden cognate issue.
Yeah, correct.
It's not going to be pretty.
Including potentially someone who might be president in a few months.
Yeah.
All right. David, thank you for joining. We appreciate it. Sorry, I had to cut you off a little bit. All right. So tonight, I'll be back 6 p.m. Eastern, back at our regular time. We'll look at the events of the day. My colleagues tell me there's not much news in the Trump interview that just streamed live or it streamed out. It wasn't live, but while we were talking. But we'll talk about the Al Smith dinner. We'll talk about some polls that I believe may be coming out today. And we'll talk more about the early vote and what's going on in Georgia. And of course, there'll be events during the day, including the vice president in Wisconsin we'll talk about. Then a week from today, some of you already know about this, but I want to make sure everybody knows, because a week from today, we've got two great events. First, with Karl Rove. He is a partisan Republican, but he is, in my career, he is unparalleled at explaining the demography and geography of the Electoral College. So for 2 hours, Karl will generously sit with us, and we'll go over 7 maps of the 7 battleground states, and we'll talk about, again, where things are, historical data, early vote, as I said, geography and demography, who he sees as the favorites, and of course, as always, we'll take your questions. So mark that again, next Thursday, 11 Eastern Time. That picture of me we'll never use again. That's an AI-generated picture. I barely recognize myself, but I think it's hilarious. But focus on the substance. Karl Rove, Electoral College. That should say Electoral College Chalk Talk, not Electoral Calendar. And then that same night, same day rather, special edition of Two-Way Tonight. It's all about Pennsylvania is the name of it. We'll have lots of data from Pennsylvania. We'll have undecided voters. We'll have politicians. We'll have strategists. We'll have a full discussion of where the most important state on the map sits. So join us again next Thursday, morning meeting at 9, Karl Rove at 11, and then a special edition of Two-Way Tonight. Will you guys join that? Can I book you now live the way Tim Russert used to do? Force people to commit. Yeah. Sean, are you busy that night? I know you're busy 6 to 7.
On the 24th?
Yeah. 11 to 1.
I actually have my own little surprise. No, I will not be able to join you. We'll discuss that
for either show. Can't even join for the Karl Rove episode.
I will watch the Karl Rove show. Yes.
Okay.
I have to look. I will. Well, we'll discuss. I have some logistical things that I'm working in my head as we talk in terms of what do you call it? Time zones.
I think you're probably bothering other people and offending their sensibilities, so you won't discuss it right here in front of the group. But that's
okay. I'll be in Arizona. How's that? And I've got to figure out the time change in my head on the fly.
Sometimes it's 2 hours. Sometimes it's 3.
I know. Well, thank you.
Yeah. All right. Thank you everybody for watching. Love the participation. We had lots of hands up today. Sorry we didn't get to more people, but we had a lot we wanted to talk about. Always looking for the right balance. See you at 6 o'clock tonight, and thank you again for watching. Have a great day, whether you're in Wisconsin or not.